Got another little black and white TV in to take a look at. This one's a Magnasonic. It goes back to, I guess 1982. That would put it about 37 years old now. And it probably hasn't been turned on in at least 30 years, maybe a little longer. It's been sitting in the basement, and we're going to see if this thing will even turn on. Check it out. This is an old Magnasonic black and white 12-inch TV. This would be, it's probably either a Samsung or an LG. See if we can find one. This was made 1982, and believe it or not, in 1982 there were still quite a few small portable black and white TVs being sold, and these would have sold for probably about $100 at the time, which seems like a lot of money. In 1982 that was a lot of money, but a 20-inch color television back in 1982, a very basic one, would have set you back $500 or $600, and one of the more fancy ones like a Sony TV would have set you back $1,000 here in Canada. So these were, $129, $149, whatever. But there's still a fair number of these being sold. I had one very similar to this before that, back in the 70s, when I had one in my bedroom, a little black one, a little Hitachi, and the thing went on forever, but it got toasted. This one was brought to me to check over. Controls need to be cleaned for starters. But apparently it gets no picture. It just has a white screen. So we're going to check this out. And I see snow there, so it may be just that the tuner, it looks like the tuner needs to be cleaned up on here. But we're going to see if we can get this thing working. This is just for a collector. I mean, you can't receive anything on these today without using a converter box or hooking them up to like a VCR to play tapes and stuff. This is more a collector's item for sentimental value for the owner of it. As you can see, the unit has yellowed quite nicely over the years. These used to be kind of a white color, but this plastic is yellowed just from exposure to ultraviolet light from the sun, for example. But this would have been white when it was new. You can see that the back is more the color that it would have been when it was new down here. But this is what happens with plastic when it ages, especially if it's exposed to the sun. It discolors. So I'm going to pull the back off this thing, and we'll see whether we can make some pictures happen on this one tonight. So I've got the screws out now, the moment of truth. Is this an LG or is this a Samsung? It's going to be one of the two. Want to take a guess? Before I pull the back, I'm going to say this one's going to be a Samsung. Let's see if I'm right. It is a Samsung. You can see the Samsung tube here. The old Samsung logo. Samsung Electron Devices. Very, very simple chassis on these. You don't need much in the way of regulation and so forth on these things. The power supplies themselves are quite very, very basic. Not like a color set where you have to regulate the B plus a lot more accurately, because that will affect the high voltage, which if the tube is driven too hard will produce X-rays. They still have regulation in them, but not to the same degree that their color counterparts required, just because the high voltage on a black and white tube is only a fraction of what it is on a color set. Here's our antenna input. The first thing I'm going to do on this one, we've got a UHF and a VHF tuner. That's the UHF tuner. This is the VHF tuner. We're going to need to clean the contacts on the tuner itself. So let's get working on that. We'll clean the contacts on the tuner and see whether we get a picture on this thing. So first we'll start by removing the tuning knobs so that I can remove the tuner itself. The knobs will just, I want to be careful because I don't want to break them, but there's actually two knobs on this. There's the fine tuning knob, and then there's the main tuning here. There's the UHF knob off, and the volume knob. I just got to get the VHF knob off of this thing. There we go. Okay, now I can remove the actual tuner. I don't know if I need to remove the volume control on this. I think the tuners are separate. We'll remove the screws to lift the tuner out. Both tuners will come out on a block, and that way I can separate them and get the cover off this one so I can clean the contacts in it. Man, it's been years since I've worked on one of these sets. I remember when I first got into the repair business, there were still a few of these things being serviced. You used to see the odd black and white set came in, and they're all these Samsung sets. There's a few Gold Star sets too. That was when Gold Star, or LG, was still known as Gold Star. So we'd see the odd Gold Star set, but an awful lot of Samsung sets. Okay, there's the tuner itself. The UHF tuner is more like a radio tuner. It's just a capacitor. The VHF tuner is actually a switch. So I want to take the cover off this thing to clean it, so I need to actually remove the tuner from the bracket. So we'll remove these extra screws here. That way I can remove the tuner from the bracket. Oh, that one doesn't want to come out. There it goes. Now I can remove this screw and remove the cover from the old tuner, so you can see the tuner switch. And we'll get in there with some cleaner and clean it properly. A lot of people would just take the tuner spray and just spray it into the tuner and hope for the best. That's not the way to clean a tuner. The proper way to clean one of these old mechanical tuners was to actually remove the cover. And the reason for that is, now you can see what's inside here. There's not just one switch, there's multiple switches here. There's a switch here, another switch here, another switch there, and one there. So there's 4 sets of contacts, and contacts down below here as well. So we need to get cleaner into all of these contacts and then rotate the control to clean it. Now, we used to use a cleaner. I used to use a cleaner called Tuno Power, which was great stuff put out by Chemtronics. Don't have any of that now. I don't think they even make that stuff anymore. They probably haven't made it for years. But it was a very good cleaner because it was gritty and it would keep the contacts clean. I don't have anything like that now. I've got a couple choices. I can use Neutral or I can use Deoxit. I think what I'll use on this is I'm going to use some Deoxit, the pure stuff, where I can just spray it on the switch here and it comes out in a metered amount. And then I can just rotate the switch and get the contacts clean this way. Not that this thing's actually ever gonna tune anything again. It's if it's ever used, it's probably gonna just stay on channel 3, being used with a converter box or a modulator or a VCR, but we still want to make sure that channel 3 works. So I'll just make sure that all the contacts get a shot of cleaner. Get it worked in through all the contacts. And then the last one down here. If you remember years ago when we had these tuners, if you're old enough, I'm old enough certainly to remember, when we do this, my parents would scream at me saying, don't turn the control like that, you're gonna break it. Actually, that was probably the best way to tune. When you switching it slow like this, you're not really doing much as far as polishing the contacts of the switch. When you turn it quickly in both directions, you're actually polishing the contacts of the switch. It's nighttime and that bird is still whistling. It's an eagle, by the way. Nice bulging top on that cap, but I don't think that's the problem. It's not that the cap is bulging, it's just the top. That's just a cover. The capacitor is actually underneath that. This will actually push down. Right, that's a cover that's on top of it. So you can see it flexes down. So that's not a bulging cap, that's just the heat shrink that they put on here, on the casing of it here, has squeezed the top and pushed it up. New ones look exactly the same. Okay, we'll get some cleaner into that volume control. Replace the knobs. And give us thing power and hook it up to my in-house analog cable system and see whether I get a picture. Now we're going to hook this up to coaxial cable. We got to do it right. Little matching transformer, Electroline, 75 to 300 ohms. Hey, at least this one doesn't say property of cable TV on it. I wonder if one of the other ones I have says that. We used to always have to use these things for these old 300 ohm terminals. Right, everybody's old cable TV, everybody's old TV had screw terminals like this before they had coax, and cable companies would install these on every TV. Of course, now they're still useful for hooking up coax cable to like an FM tuner, because a lot of FM tuners still just have the two screws. I got a bunch of them. I shouldn't say a bunch. I think I got 3. I got given a box of old parts. And these are some of the things that are in there, so I've hung on to them because you never know when you're going to need one. Power on. Oh, that sounds good. I hear sound already. That's my in-house channel, although I think it's the wrong channel. It should be channel 12. Let's see if I can tune it in here. Oh, we got a horizontal hold problem for starters, but we'll see whether we can adjust that. There's a horizontal hold control on this on the back. So let's see whether we can adjust that and make it work. So on the back here, we've got horizontal hold control. That's the one that's got the coil on it. Be a vertical hold, probably vertical size and vertical linearity. So let's adjust the horizontal hold control back here and see whether I can make this picture sync up. There we go. Now the next control over would be vertical, and we have vertical. This thing's actually producing a nice black and white picture. A little bit out of focus. See whether we can work on that. But that's channel 12, and that tuner is still not in great shape, but it's holding. Where are my channels here? Should be a channel 4. Channel 5. Security cameras, 12. Focus is out. We'll see if we can fix that. But looks like it's holding there. See if we can adjust that focus and make it a little better. The other two controls on the back here are actually brightness and contrast. That's looking a little bit better already. You'll notice on here, if my camera will actually focus on here, probably a little too close, that there's a focus adjustment right here. It's R801. And how you go about adjusting the focus on this is you change the value. These are so cheap that they didn't bother to put a adjustment for the focus. You just change the voltage across this, or change the resistance, which would change the voltage on the focus pin here. So that's how they did that's how they did the focus on these old TVs. Was you change the value of the resistor, and you'd go up or down in value, and that would change the focus. I'm just checking the focus voltage on the tube, and I got 24 volts focus, which I think we're a little bit on the low side. So it's going to trace back where the focus lead goes. It's the green wire here where it goes on the board, and we'll trace it back and see why the voltage is looking to be a little bit on the low side. Just been tracing back the circuitry here, and looks like, let's look at C206 here. There's a little cap right here, 160 volt little cap here. This one might be going a little bit high and causing the voltage to drop a bit. So we're just going to take this one out and just take a look at it. It seems that my voltage to my CRT might be just a little bit off. This is a 4.7 microfarad 160 volt. That bird, I tell you, this goes on all day and all night. So it's measuring 5.1 microfarads. Let's just check the ESR on this cap. I bet you it's gone dry. I mean, after all, this thing is what, 38 years old, this TV? .7 at 160. It should be about 10, between 10 and 18 for a 250. Oh, it's not bad. Isn't that interesting? Look at that. 1.3 ohms. Yeah, that's, what did I say it was supposed to be? 4.7. Okay. Between 2.3, I was looking at 2.2. Between 2.3 and 5 is what the chart says. So between 2.3 and 5 for a new one. And this one's 1.3. So this cap is fine. These old Samsungs, this is how Samsung got started in the TV manufacturing business, was they made a lot of these black and white TVs for other companies like Magnasonic and Viking and Sears, and all the house brands were Samsung. And they weren't great TVs at the time. We used to joke about how bad Samsung was because in their early days, the Korean stuff wasn't very good, not like it is today. But this one certainly has tested, had the test of time. It's 38 years old and it still works. I'm having some problems with the focus on it, and it might actually be the CRT itself is got a problem. But there's no adjustment for focus on this. Just change values of resistors basically, and find one that's the correct value. Unlike the color sets which had an adjustment, these don't. It's all set up based on the incoming voltage and voltage regulation, and it's set by a resistor. And it seems like the tube is blooming a bit when I turn up the brightness. It's got a lot of emission. It's got a lot of brightness. It's not focusing very well. As you can see, it's getting a little bit better. It's not perfect, but it's a lot better than when I started. It's got the NASA TV channel going now. Security cameras. I would say that that's not looking too bad now, actually. Talk about a cheap design, no focus control, just change your focus by changing the value of a resistor. It's they just kind of pick any value and stick it in there, and here it is. That's as good as it gets. Now to give you an idea how poor the regulation on this is, if we change the voltage, you'll notice the picture size changes. So there's 115 volts there, 120. Even if I take it up to 145, the TV won't shut down. The regulation on these sets is almost non-existent on these old sets. Also, as I suspected, I'm starting to think more and more it is the CRT, because the longer this thing has run, the sharper the image has gotten. I haven't done anything, right? It's been running now for a little while, but just as it's warming up, the focus is getting better and better. So I think maybe it's probably the tube itself was a bit tired just because it's been sitting for so many years without actually being turned on. Because now that it's been running for a little while, as you can see, the focus is getting better. It's a lot better than it was when I started. It's great having analog channels for testing my own little network here. That box is initializing. Yeah, this is exactly what's happened on this. It's just this unit has not been used since the 1980s. It actually belongs to my daughter's boyfriend, and they've had the thing. I guess it was probably his mother's TV because he's not that old. And it was just sitting. It's been sitting for many, many years, not turned on. It was just sitting in a basement for like the last 30 years, not turned on. I haven't changed any components on here whatsoever, other than cleaned the tuner, which was filthy, couldn't tune anything in, and that's it. And this was so blurry that you couldn't read anything on it, and now it's clearing up to the point where you can read the crawl at the bottom of the screen here. And I don't want to leave that one on. You know what'll happen if I leave that on? I'll get nailed. But it's now clearing up. So I'm going to let it continue to run for a bit. But it's just what's happening on here is, first of all, the tube is warming up. It hasn't been used for so long. The tube is warming up, the emissions getting better on the tube, and all the electrolytic capacitors in here are now starting to reform because they haven't been charged in so long. But now that they're charged up, they're reforming and becoming a little more stable. So I think that the picture will probably sharpen quite a bit more as I let this thing run. But at this point, I'm going to say that this is a success. I'm going to close off the video because I'm not doing anything else with it. I'm just going to let it run. There you go, old Samsung Magnasonic TV, 1982, 37 odd years old now, I guess 38 years old, and it still works. Thanks for watching.